I should have the exams graded by Sunday, I would hope. I've already graded the math, which is easy to grade, especially if you get the answer right. It's really easy to grade. If not, I have to go through and try to figure out if it was a math error or whatever. But the class did really well on the math. Essays, we'll see. Some of y'all are really smart to come and show, if you hadn't had me before, and show me your answer just to make sure you knew how picky I was. So that will probably help them a lot. So hopefully by Sunday, I have to teach a class this weekend, so that's going to slow me down a little bit, but at least I got the math done. And then we're not having class October 31st, so you can watch this movie. I know it's an old movie. There's nothing in this movie that's not true except for the numbers are dated. It's a really, really good movie. I'll send you the link. It's on Vimeo. That's the guy that really bugs me in the movie for some reason. You'll see when we get there. But it's a really, really good movie. It's about the same length as our class. And so and you'll see some pretty tough stories. I think it's Elijah. Of someone who is in a vegetative state, costing millions to keep her alive, and then she passes away. And so you'll see that story. That's part of. So there's a lot of hidden your. So this story with this very sweet dear lady, very end of her life, she's going to pass away in a hospital. Will she be better off passing away in a hospice? No, but Medicare is going to spend several $1 million keeping her body functioning. But is she there? The doctors say she's not there. She's already passed away, and her son's making that decision. It's really rough. But when you get into the issue of what do we do if at end of life care, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Why do we do that? You're going to have, but most of this movie is about over treatment. And you'll see as they go through, they do a great job throughout. Here's the example I was talking about of do you operate on prostate cancer or do you monitor and wait? And that's what these two are having a conversation about. So you're going to see two approaches. Three of them, I think three of them actually get the surgery. One of them, he's ecstatic about it. The guy I can't stand in this movie. One got it and he had the problems this guy's talking about. And he said, I'm so glad I got it because I'm still alive. This guy says, let's actively monitor and watch. So you'll see the three approaches. And the movie makes the point of how can you possibly make that decision? It's a tough decision. It was a really good movie. They're going to do that with several things. They're going to talk about C-sections and pregnancies and births and why C-sections are too high, and why some hospitals do more than they should. Talk about breast cancer, talk about, I forget all the ones they have in here. I don't know if they don't have a break here. There's the babies. This guy in particular is really, really good. This is the guy who says, I'm paid to harm my patients, or I'm paid more when I harm my patients. He's a really, really good. He's at when we talk about Michael Porter, he's at the hospital. Michael Porter talks about is doing this stuff right. So he's in the right place. But it's really, really good. I think you'll find it fascinating. Some tough stories throughout, some really tough stories. People making tough decisions. What you're trying to do though here is assess this major issue of overdiagnosis. Are we over treating people in a way that's actually harming them instead of helping them, and the cost of that? And this movie does a great job, even though it's dated, very, very dated. I wish they would update this movie and give a whole new version of it. As you go through it, think about quotes you can do from this movie, because there are some stellar quotes. This guy has some great quotes. And this lady at the end, I don't know if I can find her. Yeah, there's a lady at the very end, all of them. There's several people in here that had just incredible quotes um, that are would work well in the paper. So I'll give you this link. You don't have to necessarily watch it. Don't watch it on October 31st. I would watch it between now and next Thursday's class because this is really key. So you're on your own in the movie, but pull the information out. I think you'll find a very fascinating movie. It's a really, really well done documentary. It's shocking as well. You might watch it with some of your older relatives so they can understand what's going on in the healthcare system. I could show you so many more videos. My not my TikTok feed, but my Facebook feed. For some reason, those I'm studying healthcare, and oh man, some of the quotes very similar what this movie's saying. And so the fact that there's years between it, people are saying the exact same thing today that they were saying in this movie. This movie just does it in a really, really fascinating way, really pretty powerful. So I'll send you the link, but you can see it's just Vimeo and Money and Medicine. It's a PBS. It might have been a Frontline documentary. Very, very, PBS does some really great documentaries. Extremely well done throughout. A lot of good quotes, a lot of good information. Doesn't necessarily answer all the questions, but it certainly raises questions of isn't there a better way to do it? All right. Is everybody ready with your research paper? You're ready to go. So we're going to focus right now on a huge issue, which is overdiagnosis. It's worth extra points because it's a huge issue. Remember, overdiagnosis, overtreatment means that we're treating a whole lot of people who will not benefit from the treatment, but we don't always know which people benefit and which don't. So you'll see that with prostate cancer. 14 men have the surgery. Only one life is saved. The other 13 could have gone without the surgery and would have lived, would have been much better off. Some of the 13 that live, that didn't need the surgery, end up having to wear diapers, all these kind of things that are not very pleasant for older people. But you don't know which of the 14 was going to be saved by the surgery and which of the 13 would have gone without the surgery. What we call that overdiagnosis, overtreatment. We're going to tie that. You're going to notice on the technology side, a lot of this overdiagnosis is getting addressed by AI in a really quite powerful way if the doctors will allow it to happen. You're seeing, especially on mental illness drugs, there's a lot of drugs used on that side where a very small percentage of people using the drug actually benefit from it. A lot of people using it. AI is probably going to help us figure out what's the right drug combination for the right people, because we're giving a lot of drugs, very expensive drugs, to people that are not benefiting from it. And it's just trial and error. Doctors just trying it to see if it works or not. And it's very expensive. So let's look at a couple of these articles. National data demonstrates significant increases in early stage disease. So you think, well, that's good. We're catching people early. Pre-diabetes, pre-hypertension. The problem is that pre-stuff is not saving any lives. That can't be good, right? Because all the pre-stuff costs a lot of money. So you think, wow, we're catching people early. We're helping them out early. Surely we're saving some lives. No, we're just spending more money. We're not saving extra lives. So what are we doing? Screening for breast cancer and prostate cancer detect more cancers that are insignificant. So by being more aggressive, we're essentially finding more things that are gonna harm people. What's the exception? Colon cancer, cervical cancer are examples of effective screening programs in which early detection and removal have reduced incidence as well as late-stage disease. This chart's a little tough to read, but look at thyroid cancer because this is the one I was talking about. So here's the number of people diagnosed and operated on. So in 1975, it was 5 out of 100,000. We've almost tripled that. So you say, wow, that's great. We found almost 3 times more people early. We caught it early, so we could get rid of the thyroid. This is the operation I had. Get rid of their thyroid. So up, well, 185%. What happened to mortality? Hardly budged. which means what do? We operated on a lot of people who didn't need the surgery because we found a little spot on their thyroid and said, oh, that must be. You could put this chart into your paper. It's a little confusing, but you will notice these two examples, colon and cervical. We're doing fewer procedures and we're saving more lives. And you can ask your grandparents about colonoscopies. They used to be dreaded. Now they put you under, you don't even notice. It's just kind of, it's not that bad. And you only get one every 10 years. It's an amazing colonoscopy. It's like the amazingly effective healthcare where they're treating fewer people because the tests are far, far better. And in treating fewer people, they're actually saving a lot more lives. It's quite amazing. That's what you want. That's what you're hoping for. You see the same thing with cervical cancer. So they're the two exceptions. Optimal screening frequency depends on the cancer's growth rate. If cancer is fast growing, screening is rarely effective unless you're going to go to the doctor every single day. It's just not going to help. If the cancer is slow progressing, then just monitor. That's why colon cancer has such effective because it's slow moving. Screening as a deal and less frequent screening is maybe effective. So you don't need to be aggressive and do surgery because you can just screen, see if it's getting worse. In case of an indolent tumor, detection is potentially harmful because the tumor's not going to do anything to you. It's just sitting there. It's just a spot. These observations provide an opportunity to refocus screening on reducing disease morbidity and mortality and lowering the burden of cancer screening and treatments. This is what we should be doing. This is called outcome-based medicine or evidentiary medicine. That the woman in the video who I couldn't find, she gives a great quote on evidentiary medicine. We have all this data, but no one's collecting it. No one's analyzing it. We're not learning from our own operations, our own procedures. And we really don't know. We're making decisions in the dark. And since we're in the dark, how does the decision get made? Well, the decision is made based on who makes money. The surgeon makes money by operating on you, so that's the decision that's made without any evidence that the surgery is better than monitoring and waiting. So this is what I was talking about with President Obama, where he said, let's provide free doctor visits. His thought process, which makes a lot of sense, is if we get people to the doctor more often, we'll find stuff early. And that sounds good. And in some cases, that really is good. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. More screening so we catch stuff early. The problem is it doesn't seem to be effective as far as making us healthier, making us live longer. All it's doing is putting us in the hospital. It's worrying us. We're having surgeries we don't need. So the original intent of screening was to detect stuff early and improve outcomes. The detection of cancers with better biology contributes to better outcomes. Screening always results in identity of more harmless disease. So how do you fix that? How do you AI might be the answer, more data, better data collection. One thing I love about AI is that it shares information with everybody immediately. Unlike some doctor in Kansas versus some doctor in Minnesota discovers something, they got to write a journal, they got to read the journal. Not everybody reads journals. But now once an article gets written, AI now knows everything and it immediately reacts. It's pretty amazing. So hopefully AI will radically change the healthcare system. What about prostate cancer? Ben Stiller, I don't know if y'all know who that is. I get him and his father mixed up. Which one's was in Seinfeld? His father, Jerry's. Okay, so this is the younger one who's probably older than I am. So he had the PSA. They discovered prostate cancer. He had the surgery. So he said prostate PSA test saved his life. In reality, we don't know it saved his life. It might have saved his life. There's one chance in 14 that it saved his life, but we don't know. PSA screening saves Peter, Tom, but kills Rajev because complication of surgery. Dick and Anil, the net benefit is 1. It also kills Donald, the net benefit is 0. But here's the important point. Even if the net benefit is 0, it still means screening saved Peter, Tom. So we don't know who it's saved, who doesn't saved. Someone's get the screening and they're going to die in the surgery. Someone's getting the screening and their life's going to be miserably messed up because of the surgery. That's it. We don't know. And that's why I say AI might be the thing that looking at all that data figures out what's the difference between Peter, Tom, and Nick and Anil. What is it that we're looking at in that PSA screen that's telling us the difference in the one who needs the surgery and the one who doesn't? You might think it's absolutely amazing we're not collecting that data, but we don't. The advantage of AI is what? That it can look at 1 trillion things and collect it and look for patterns. Unlike humans, we can miss the obvious. So hopefully that'll be in our future. The trial showed screening for prostate cancer had a miserable treatment effect, and 293 people had to be invited for screening to prevent 1 death. That's impressive. For comparison, the number needed to screen reduce the death of lung cancer was 320. Screening of beyond net survivor benefits. PSA screening can lead to harms from surgery and radiation therapy. The value or disutility of harm is subjective and personal. Urologists are getting better at sparing nerves. So the surgery is getting better. You'll see that in the video. That last guy that's a little strange, he had the most advanced, complex surgery there is, this massive, massive machine. It causes fewer of those problems after the surgery, but it's incredibly expensive. You can just look at the machine and tell that's a multi-million-dollar machine. You're gonna have to do a lot of those surgeries to pay for that machine, which means you're going to be doing a lot more PSA screening to find more people to operate on. Some say he's spreading misinformation by advocating PSA screenings. I argue it's not possible to spread misinformation about screening because we don't have a clue. I mean, it seems excessive, but wait till you see the video. That's essentially what this woman's going to say at the end, and she seems pretty knowledgeable. You can tell she knows what she's talking about. Screening is an information problem. Some benefit, some are harmed, but we don't know who will benefit or who will be harmed. I love this. It is somewhat amazing. It is somewhat amazing we don't have a good database collection in healthcare to start formulating all this. I put that around the middle of the other ones. I shouldn't have done that. And put it at the end here. So what I've taken from this is where, especially actually after watching that video, I wish I'd watched that video before my surgery, because what the video opened my eyes up to was ask questions. Ask your doctor, what do you know? What does the science say? What's my probability of dying from this? And I talked about that last class. Give me the data that you do have. If my doctor doesn't know any of that, then I want to know, is this just you that doesn't know it, or does no one know it? And then tell your doctor if you can be insulting. If they're about to cut into you, you might want to be insulting. You say, well, I'm going to go to another doctor because I can't believe you don't have this data. I mean, how would a doctor react to that? I don't know. They get pretty huffy. Mine got pretty huffy if I challenged. He was so sweet and friendly, and if I questioned anything, he got really huffy. But if you go in knowing that this doctor is making decisions, maybe without any data, but he sure wants to make money opening you up, it should make you step back, and start asking questions. And the first question you ask is, what do you actually know? What data do you have? And you as a patient, don't you have a right to ask that, don't you think? Let's talk about pills, medication. Paroxetine, a common antidepressant. There was no conversation about the alternatives, such as psychotherapy, or discussion of the drug side effects or when to stop taking it. I had a very typical patient experience, a very typical patient attitude at the time. I was a believer that would be a great idea just to solve my problem with an antidepressant. After a few years of taking a vacation, she became extremely apathetic and lethargic, a common effect of that impression that deepened over time. For many people, getting off antidepressants can take months or even years of painstaking reduction of the drugs to smaller and smaller doses, not just a couple of weeks. I mean, y'all know that y'all probably heard this on painkillers, haven't you? Painkiller addiction. It's just, it amazes me the few times I go to the doctors for things that didn't hurt me at all, and they're prescribing painkillers. I can't remember the last doctor I did something. I think I had a cyst taken off, and she's prescribing this massive jar of painkillers. And I was like, I'm not in pain. I went and picked it up because she sent it to the pharmacy, so I just felt bad it was sitting there. But are y'all scared of painkillers? I've known some people whose lives were completely destroyed from painkillers and just couldn't get over them. So taking these drugs shouldn't the doctor have told her those were symptoms, that this could really, really harm you, that you might not be able to get off of this, you might get addicted to it. But why doesn't he tell you? What if the doctor gets some kind of kickback from prescribing these? There's a big question for science to answer about these drugs. There are still big questions to answer about these drugs. People could easily kill themselves by overdosing. And Western countries, 10 to 15% of adults take antidepressants. And people are taking them for longer than they used to. A quarter of Americans using them have been doing so for a decade. As people age, that becomes increasingly hazardous. They raise the risk of falls, gastrointestinal bleeding, strokes, and bleeding after surgery. And when taken during pregnancy, some have been linked to a doubling or tripling of the risk of certain birth defects. I feel the same thing about the weight reduction pills they're talking about. I don't know if y'all look at those side effects. They're not all that glorious either. They look pretty horrible. And those are pills that you can't stop taking, or you start gaining the weight back. I don't know if I want to take a pill like that for a long period of time. The benefits have turned out to be less than once believed. For many years, drug companies, the main source of research, tended not to publish in scientific journals the results of clinical trials that cast doubt on their utility. I don't know where you would put that. I think that goes under fraud. When pharmaceuticals print only the reports that support their drugs, and they completely destroy the reports that don't support their drugs, that sounds like fraud to me. Wouldn't you agree with that? Hey, this study, and that's what some of them do. They do things that you would not do in finance because it'd be bad statistics. But they'll run a test. They have their null hypothesis. They'll run the test, and the drug doesn't do what they need it to. But they discover in the test that it had some effect on something else. And so then they say, well, let's say it fixes that. Well, you can't do that. That could just be noise. It could just be pure coincidence. You're not supposed to, if you're testing A and just randomly see C, you can't go out and start advertising C. But that's what drug companies are looking for, any way to push these drugs. That practice bias scientific reviews of the field of drug and the drug's favor. Report what supports your drug, delete what doesn't. It found that drugs had a substantial effect on depression beyond that of placebo for only 15%. Wouldn't you love to have a company where you can sell something and only 15% of your customers actually it's useful for them, but the other 85% keep paying for it because they don't have any reason. They don't know if it's helping them or not. You might say I got better, but the people who took the placebo got better too. So which would you rather, if you knew it was going to help you, which would you rather have, the pill or the placebo? I'd rather have the placebo if it's going to make me addicted to it after that. Though antidepressants unquestionably do help some people, exactly how they do is unknown. Exactly how many people are truly benefit is a matter of serious investigation. This is where The Economist has written some articles. I can't remember if I put them in here, but how AI studies are really, really zeroing in on who are those 15%. Exactly what are their characteristics so that we can treat just them and we don't harm the other 85%. We don't waste precious dollars on the other 85%. We don't need it. Though many patients' symptoms do ameliorate when they start taking antidepressants, for those with less severe depression, this is mainly a consequence of the placebo effect of taking a pill. The challenge, therefore, is to identify those who would truly benefit from using antidepressant. So this is kind of where the AI comes in. The hope is that combining information about individual patients' could be used to develop personalized predictions about whether or not they would do better on therapy or medication. I'm actually pretty excited about AI for healthcare. You're going to have a challenge that obviously AMA and doctors and hospitals are probably going to fight it if it's going to cut their revenues. So we have to find some way for it to work in a way that we benefit. At the moment, drug choice works by trial and error. Do y'all know that? Hey, here's a drug. Let's see if it works. So selected more or less at random and replacement chosen a few weeks later if it doesn't do the business. That's what doctors are doing. Hey, let's try this drug. It worked on 15% of the people. It worked on more than that because of the placebo effect. Two things that have so far emerged about how to time such succession, one positive, one negative. The positive, that patients stay on the drugs, they're less likely to have a relapse of depression. The negative is that the longer they are on the drugs, the greater risk becomes of their experience withdrawal symptoms. So getting off is going to be tough. I'm on 2 drugs. I hate it. Neither one of them had these type of effects. My 70-year-old friends all brag about that they're on zero drugs. It irritates the life out of me because they're not as fit as I am. So it irritates me. But I mean, your goal should be to make it 80 without being on any pills. We'll talk about how many 80-year-olds are on pills. It's quite a few. If you don't need the pill, don't take it. But you're sitting there in the doctor's office and they want to prescribe. You know, how do you fight against that? What the doctor is saying? It's a tough equation. I'll skip through that one. Between 27 and 86% of people attempting to come off antidepressants experience withdrawal symptoms, and that nearly half of these describe those symptoms as severe. I don't know why this range is so wide, but probably comes back to how little data we have. Why does a doctor provides drugs? Because they look in their toolkit, that's what they have. Why does someone with type 2 diabetes get prescribed drugs and insulin and all that? Because diet is not part of the doctor's toolkit. Exercise, walking, those kind of things are not part of the toolkit. There's a book I'm reading right now that's really quite exceptional on diet. It's pretty interesting the effect of insulin has on our health. I'm changing radically how I'm eating just based on that. I'm sure 2 weeks from now, a book's going to come out and say everything he said is wrong because they keep going full circle on diet. But there is a big question: why is weight such a huge issue today when it wasn't 50 years ago? What's changed? And there's a lot of things you can look at that seem to have that impact. Obviously, sugars and refined carbohydrates and all those kind of things, but there's a lot more going into it. But doctors don't have those in their toolkits. What doctors have is pills and surgeries and those kind of things. So even if we find these solutions, if we don't train doctors and pay doctors to benefit by giving those solutions, then we're not going to fix the system. The liquid formulations and a persistency needed for the preparation of small doses are expensive. A month's worth may cost as much as an annual supply of pills, and not all antidepressants are available in liquid form. Healthcare systems face a risk of there being growing numbers of aging patients who start experiencing the side effects. There will be extra falls, strokes, seizures, heart problems, all these other things. We're setting ourselves up for a disaster in this industry, but an industry is making so much money off of this. Plus, they make money off of the side effects. So what's the incentive? Remember the word incentive on this. Y'all may need some of these pills after this class because this is not encouraging stuff at all. All right, here's okay. Well, I'm going to leave over diagnosis, but don't forget money in medicine. I really will be looking for some quotes there. I think I put on Canvas. I'll look and see because I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I did. So John Kim, he needed a thesis paper for his, I think it was an honor student. So I told him, watch the movie and give us comprehensive notes from the movies. So you might actually open his document while you're watching the movie. He wrote it like a 2-column paper, so he made it look pretty fancy. Because he took his notes in the order of the movie. So you might watch it as you're going. Be careful. The movie I have now might have extra scenes in it, so you might have a few extra. There was 2 versions. There's a shorter version and a longer version. Vimeo actually has the longer version, so there's a couple other diseases they have that might not be in here. But you can see he did a great job. If he's got quotes in here that you want to copy and paste in your paper, you can. So this is essentially the documentary, but his summary of it. And he was a very strong student, so it's written very, very well. Here's that hospital I was talking about. That one guy I was talking about. He has some of the best quotes. Intermountain seems to be one of the leaders in preventing overdiagnosis. All right, so let's flip up to another scary topic. This one right here, it's one of the first problems. It's called poor medical care quality controls. So you'd assume, wow, the US spends so much on healthcare, we must just have top-notch quality, few mistakes. The US spends the most of any country on health, the major countries on healthcare, and it ranks the lowest on quality. UK is ranked the highest. Now these are old numbers, so I wouldn't use this chart, but the time this was written, here's our quality, we're number 11, and here's our cost, 8,000, the highest. UK had the highest quality and the lowest cost. At the time this was written, now the UK is really struggling right now. So I'm sure if you redid this chart, they would not be so high now. The UK system is just getting cost prohibitive. A lot of people talk about Canada. Where does Canada rank? It's number 10 as of this point. Number 2, Switzerland, pretty low cost. These are not insignificant differences or huge differences. They also show you where the different categories are. And in fact, you look at timeliness of care, that's where the UK ranks 3rd. They're probably much lower on that now because of the problems we're having with funding. All right, here's another one. The older you are, the worse the hospital is for you. What is a hospital going to do? Probably harm you more than help you when you get today. So remember that quote I gave you. You don't have to use it. Care, not cure. I had to remember who said that. Can't remember who that's. I think it was in a book I was reading. Does that seem too harsh to you? I mean, don't tell your grandparents at Thanksgiving. Oh, you're 80 now? Yeah, we're not going to cure you. We're just going to take care of you. Sounds harsh. Many elderly patients deteriorate mentally and physically in the hospital, even if they recover from the original illness or injury that brought them there. About 1/3 of patients over 70 years old and more more than half the patients 45, 85 leave the hospital more disabled when they arrived. I'm actually going to put that. All right, there's a couple places on this one. We'll talk about quality. Another place this belongs is down below, which is, I think, another kind of major area is end of life care. It's the second to last one under the problems. If you've been following President Carter, he was supposed to die many years ago. He's now in hospice. He's surrounded by his family. He's not hooked up on the machines in a bright light, sterile hospital. He's in a room that's, well, he's obviously fairly wealthy, but a nice decorated room, feels like a home. People are visiting him, and he's outliving what he would have done if he'd gone to the hospital with a lot of treatments. It's amazing what he's overcome with brain cancer and those kind of things, but he's hanging in there, but in hospice care. They're not trying to lengthen his life. They're just trying to carry him until he dies and he just keeps living. The older you are, the worse the hospital is for you. A lot of the stuff we do in medicine does more harm than good, and sometimes with the care of older people, less is more. Hospital staff often fail to feed older patients, get them out of bed enough, or control their pain. Providers frequently restrict their movements by tethering them to beds with oxygen tanks and IV poles. Doctors subject them to unnecessary procedures and prescribe redundant or potentially harmful medications. And caregivers deprive them of sleep by placing them in noisy wards or checking vital signs at all hours of the night. Not a good place to be. San Francisco General is one of them, and its acute care for elderly ward has special combinations and a team of providers to address unique needs of older patients. They focus less on original diagnosis and more on how to get the patients back home. All right, so here you see where you have a problem and solution, and they're almost identical. So here you see the problem is how do you take care of end of life? When you go down to solutions, I have cap end of air care coverage. That's not the best. I shouldn't have worded it like that. We probably should reword it. Y'all want to take the word cap out. So it should be end of life care. Let's just call it that. I kind of gave you a solution, which is, hey, when someone's in their 80s, this is the most we're gonna do for them. We just cap it. But I want you to think more broadly than that. And there are other ways. Hospice is a good example. Whether I'm putting people in hospitals, put them in hospice. We're not capping end of care life. We're actually giving them a better treatment. They're actually better off in hospitals. It's not like I say, wow, we could spend $1 million and save you, but we'll only spend 10,000 putting you in hospice. It's no, the hospice is actually better for them and cheaper. It's kind of a dual benefit. Bed rest is really, really bad. It sets off an explosive change of events that are very detrimental to people's health. How hospitals handle the old is a pressing problem. Elderly patients are a growing clientele for hospitals, a trend that will only accelerate as baby boomers age. There's another thing under the problems, which is really easy. It's like a give me point on here. If you go back up to the problems under end of care, right before that, it's the baby boomers. So those two are obviously related to each other. Doing that, you're doing that in your first paper for the class. You're talking about baby boomers. It's just going to get worse, and your generation is going to have to figure out what to do with those old people because there's going to be way too many of us. One bad hospitalization can tip them over the edge, and they may never recover. Doctors and other hospital staff focus on so intensely on treating what they came in for, pneumonia, some heart disease, that they can overlook nearly all other aspects of caring for the patients. You know, if you're a carpenter, you use a hammer. That's all you got is hammers, and you're just gonna be banging everything with a hammer. Yeah, that may not be what the patient's biggest need is. Hospitals face few consequences if elderly patients become more impaired or less functional during the stays. The federal government penalizes hospitals when patients fall, get preventable infections, or return to hospital within 30 days. But hospitals aren't held accountable if patients lose their memories or their ability to work. Most don't measure those things, so they're incentivized to keep patients from falling. If that's the case, they're gonna keep them in bed, which is bad for the patient, but they're not penalized. It keeping the patient in bed actually harms the patient. I'll show you a book. A really good writer talks about how he handled his father at the end of his father's life. And his argument was many of the elderly in the United States are worse off than prisoners in prison on a life sentence because they're so restricted. And his argument is, hey, if a 96-year-old man wants to smoke, let him smoke. If an 87-year-old woman wants to have a pet dog in her room, she may trip over the dog, but she's 87. It's her life. Let her do that. And he says, we don't let people do that. We're so overly protective that, we want to make sure they live an extra 3 months and not, die in 9 months and not in 6 months. And he's arguing, let them smoke, let them eat the stuff that's going to kill them. It's their life. They made it to 96. That's pretty good. That might be good enough. And from their standpoint, let them do it. Everybody's like, no, don't smoke. That's going to hurt your lungs. you know, your 102-year-old uncle. It's like, okay, fine. Well, you make it to 102 and then you can tell me what to do. Improving care for older patients requires an investment the hospital administrators are not willing to make. But then they argue the investment pays off, not just for older people, but for hospitals themselves, as well as the country. Those events such as bed sores, oxygen deficiency, cost Medicare about $4.4 billion annually. Physicians who reviewed incidents determined that 44% could have been prevented. So you could certainly work that into your solution side. Is there's a lot of wasted costs. Now, obviously, that 4.4 billion in cost Medicare, that's revenue to hospitals. So you get that incentive thing again. Why fix these things if it becomes income to the hospital? Outright mistakes, poor or inadequate treatment in hospitals leads to needless medical spending on extended hospital visits, readmissions, in-home caregivers, and nursing home care. Nursing home stays can cost $85,000 a year, and the annual hospital stay for an elderly person, average hospital stay for an elderly person is $12,000. We're spending a lot of money on people that are really at the end of their lives, and we're trying to extend those by weeks sometimes and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. All right, I'll give you more on the medical problems. There's some quotes that we'll see later. All right, let's go up to fraud. I talked about one, pharmacies reporting, not reporting studies that show ineffective drugs. That seems like fraud to me. You'll have to find that quote. So let's see what this says on fraud. Right, so the human HSS, our Department of Health, says for every dollar they spend on fraud, they'll save the taxpayer $8. So our government decided that sounds good. Let's cut their budget. That was their solution. Doesn't sound like a good solution. So you can find this fraud. It is out there. It's actually becoming more widespread as people are finding that they can make more money doing it. We'll see that in a quote here pretty soon. Well, here it is right here. Some criminals are switching from cocaine trafficking to prescription drug fraud because the risk awarded adjusted rewards are higher. The money's good and the penalties are lower. Stealing patients' identities is lucrative. Medical records are worth more to crooks than credit card numbers. I like both of those on their fraud. So does crime pay? Looks like it does. I'm not encouraging y'all to get out of cocaine trafficking, but it just shows you how smart criminal gangs are. These are not stupid people. They're out there doing their research and discovering, hey, we can make more money. You know, you've probably seen the TV shows where people are, you know, they're not trading drugs. I mean, they're not trading cocaine. They're trading prescription drugs that they stole out of houses. And I don't know, high school kids, I don't know if this went on in your high school. My high school never heard of this, but kids getting together and randomly trying pills from their grandparents' medicine chest. That seems pretty insane, doesn't it? But I guess that have a fun time, I guess.
I was still at the fraud and waste system, right?
Huh?
The last one you had, what was it under again?
I put it under fraud and waste. We haven't done the waste yet. We're going to see that in the very last book. All right, we're going to flip again. I don't know where this is. Some of these, it's hard to, let's look at it. All right, this one is going to be a kind of a hodgepodge, but all right. This one I'm actually starting to change my opinion on from this book I'm reading. So we'll come back we'll come back to quality of care controls later. Sorry, we'll see it later. My articles kind of jump around. So come down here and find American lifestyles. So this book I'm reading, I really like it. It's really interesting. I'm not an expert on this, but just to show how complex the problem is. So is the problem that we eat too much? Is the problem that we don't exercise enough? And this book says no. It's not too many calories in, it's not too many calories out. He says the entire problem is insulin. And insulin is not just consumption of sugar. So he's getting into it. It's really pretty fascinating. He's very, very rich in studies, which I like. So he's showing it very consistent with several of the videos I've been seeing. So some of the stuff I'm going to tell you now contradicts what I've just read in this book right now. But we know we have a diet problem in the United States, mainly because that's the one difference between us and other countries. And there's a stark difference between us and other countries when it comes to quality of our health. So we have the highest obesity rate, but on other things, we're pretty good. We have fewer smokers. We don't drink as much as other countries, and your generation is drinking even less. So alcohol is coming down. I don't know if cannabis is going up or vaping, all that, that kind of thing. And I don't know the effect of vaping on these type of statistics. But we have the highest rate of obesity. This book, a lot of these books are blaming it on the U.S. food industry and the type of foods that we eat that are so much more refined carbohydrates than other countries. But there is some debate on all these, but that seems to be a big contributor. Too often cited culprits, we fear of malpractice lawsuits in our complex health care payment structure. Doctors and hospitals practice defensive medicine, ordering extraneous tests and procedures to protect themselves in the event of malpractice claims. This leads to overuse of the healthcare system. So this is I can't remember if I put malpractice in this list or not. Yeah, if you look under medical practice, insurance costs, medical malpractice, I'm not looking for much. This is a give me right here. You just got to essentially mention it and give me a good quote and you'll be good. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. Where did it go? What did I do? Oh, sorry. So doctors fear malpractice, and the system is so complex, they can essentially order more tests, they'll get paid for it. They don't have to worry about getting sued. They may be tests that they know they're not going to find it. It's kind of like that test the doctor gave me on thyroid. I know going in, he knew it's going to come back inconclusive. But he still ordered it. Why? Because he made some money off of it. So it leads to overuse. So not looking for much there. That's a pretty easy one. Fee-for-service medicine is in which hospital and doctors are paid separately for every treatment, procedure, or test they perform. Also encourages overuse. The system recent U.S. healthcare spending is so high is that hospitals and doctors charge more for their services, and there are little transparency about it. There is no uniformity to the system. Unrelated contracts with hospitals and doctors. The result is a tangled, confusing, and largely secretive collection of forces driving healthcare costs higher. This is why a hospital hosting 5 patients for knee replacement might get paid 5 different amounts for the same surgery. The country spends, okay, just another about the size of it. American adults live shorter lives. I think this is a more recent article. This is just from last year. We spend 4.3 trillion a year on keeping citizens in good shape. I don't know what that means. This is the UK, this is the Brits. So the Brits say good Nick. Anybody know what that means? This is equivalent to 17% of GDP, twice as much as the average country. There's some good quotes right there that you can put in the introduction if you like, right there. And yet American adults live shorter lives, and American infants die more often than in similarly affluent places. Pharmaceutical firms and hospitals attract much of the public. Our Much less attention is paid to the small number of middlemen who extract a far bigger rents from the system's complexity. So if y'all want to copy that up to the intro, that would probably be a good place to put that. It's the same number I gave you before, even though that was 10 years ago. So as a percent of GDP, it hasn't changed much. Obviously, the dollar amount is much more. So you might replace this quote with that one since it's much more current. This is from 2023, so that would be a much more current number. And I think these were pretty current too. So who are these other players that are costing so much? Over the past decade, these firms have quietly increased their presence in America's vast healthcare system. They do not make drugs and have not until recently treated patients. They are the intermediaries, insurers, chemists, drug distributors, pharmacy benefit managers, sitting between patients and their treatments. In 2022, the combined revenue of the 9 biggest middlemen equated to nearly 45% of America's healthcare bill, up from 25%. Big Health accounts for 8 of the top 25 companies by revenue in the S&P 500, compared with 4 for the big tech and none for big pharma. 4 private health insurers account for 50% of all enrollments. The biggest, United Health Group, and I do think they actually treat patients. I don't think they just do insurance. Had $324 billion in revenue last year. My dashboard team, Sandy, a couple of y'all were in that, I think. Maybe just Sandy. But we talked about United Health a few weeks ago because Medicare was talking about cutting the reimbursement rate and their stock came down dramatically. So 324 billion in revenue. It's 100. Look at that. Look how many customers they have. That's half the United States. 151 million customers, nearly half of all Americans. Its market capitalization has doubled to 486. Have y'all heard of this company? Y'all aware this company was that massive? This is huge. 4 pharmacy giants generate 60% of America's drug dispensing revenues. The mightiest of them, CVS Health, which is really struggling this year, made up a quarter of all pharmacy sales. Just 3 of these pharmacy benefit groups handled 80% of all prescriptions, and a whopping 92% of all drugs flow through 3 wholesalers. The Affordable Care Act limited the profits of health insurers to between 15 and 20% of collected premiums, but it imposed no restrictions on what physicians and other intermediaries can earn. The law created an incentive for insurers to buy clinics, pharmacies, and the like, and to steer customers to them rather than rivals. I mean, think about it. United Health, they got half of Americans giving insurance, but also making money on the treatment side and steering patients. I mean, it seems like a pretty good scam if you can do it. The strategy channels revenue from the profit-capped insurance business, the uncapped subsidiaries, which in theory could let insurers keep more of the premiums paid by the patients. Insurance, yeah, you can only keep 20% of your premium. You got to pay out 80%. But if you can artificially raise that 80% to be more expensive, then you're getting it back through your subsidiaries. Incredible scam. According to this association, a research firm, between 2013 and 2023, the 9 healthcare giants spent around $325 billion on 130 mergers and acquisitions. So the industry is consolidated, more power. Kaiser Permanente. Now you're going to hear about them. They've been, you'll see it in the video. You'll see it with Michael Porter. They're usually held up as this is the model you want to use. The role model for efficient, high quality healthcare. Its business with 39 hospitals and 24,000 doctors is highly integrated with Kaiser's insurance plans, treatment at the hospitals and clinic. Yet, vertical integration can have adverse side effects. Many studies have found that after hospitals acquire physician practices, price increase, but quality does not. A healthcare company that controls many aspects of the patient care can raise prices. For rivals wishing to access the network. Some also worry about physicians being nudged toward offering the cheapest treatments to patients, lowering the quality of care. So we'll see. You know, Kaiser Permanente, what are their incentives? They want to make money, right? They're a business. They want to be profitable. They're going to do acquisitions just like anybody else, try to make their business better and give them more control over the whole process. Critics argue that large pharmacy firms do not pass on the discounts to the health plans, instead keeping much of the difference to themselves. All right, I won't cover the rest of this, but you can see we're in the middle of a shakeup. So if you look at, so I just mentioned CVS. What has CVS been doing this year? Y'all probably know about Walgreens. But y'all know CVS is just not as bad, but definitely doing pretty badly. So there's CVS. I don't know if they let us compare anymore. So here's Walgreens. Here's CVS. CVS has come back a little bit, down 15%. Walgreens is down 65%. I like that. There's something going on in this industry. These companies are getting crushed. I think that's great, but what does it mean? So you got Mark Cuban out there. If you want something to research, you know, that extra percent, you could research what Mark Cuban's doing, you know, give him a call and interview him. He's trying to get rid of these middlemen, try to get the costs out of the system. Amazon is trying to get into the business, become the middleman that bring these costs down. They haven't been too successful, but they've tried. I love it that tech giants are getting in here. I love it that Costco's getting into it, but they haven't quite solved it. Mark Cuban has been banging his head against the wall trying to get this to work. It seems like he seriously wants this to work. He's the kind of guy who's like, I'm rich enough. I just want this. I just want to fix the system. So you ask, is he really in it for the money, or is he actually trying to fix something? It's interesting. You can research a lot of these, but big tech just has not, as of yet, figured out the solution for all of this. Why? Because the system is so powerful. But as I say, I hope these businesses go out of business, because I hope someone better comes along. I'd love to see Walgreens go out of business, because they irritate the life out of me. It's an amazing, inefficient business, but makes a lot of money. But this year it's really down quite a bit. All right, this article, I'm going to leave it for you. You might highlight it. I'd let you get away with that extra research under American Lifestyles, if I can find it again. American Lifestyles. What page is that? Page 79. Or if you want the book I'm reading, it's a really good book, and you want to quote some from that. But how does the food industry contribute to weight issues? That could be an entire research paper by itself. It's just been a massive analysis. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of information on how influential the food industry is when it comes to, you know, lobbying Congress, getting Congress to do things on their behalf. And there's a lot of new research. So this article is talking about that. Y'all have heard of this drug? It's a very expensive drug. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, their stock prices have really shot up for a weight loss drug. What did they discover? This is a drug that people with diabetes are using and are losing weight. And they're like, well, wow, that's pretty cool. They're losing weight. And other people use this. So could this actually help us address the issues of weight? I think the jury's out. I mean, we might find that this reduces weight, but doesn't reduce all the problems related to it. So who knows on Ozempic. About 70% Americans are overweight. It is estimated that half the world will be, because one thing we're really good at exporting is our food. Treatment could represent mountains of foreign calories. Right now, I don't know if y'all realize it, but when these drugs came out, fast food companies were seeing their stock prices fall. General Mills, other companies were seeing if people were going to eat less, food companies were going to be selling less. And we actually saw the stock market reacting to these drugs coming out. That's how material these drugs are. According to Jefferies, a bank, even airlines would benefit. I mean, it's hard to believe, but yeah, if we weigh less, it costs less to fly us around. More painstaking analysis has to include calculations, not just of obesity numbers, but who is and not eligible for insurance, the willingness to submit to the treatment, the impact of the drugs, the side effects, the dropout rates, the risk of regaining weight. There's a lot we got to work out. Right now, the stock market says they love it. There's Eli Lilly. Do you think the stock market likes these drugs? I mean, 740%. And a lot of that's just since the last 3 years. Just, most of it's that growth right there. Stock market loves it. Why? It's extremely expensive drug, and it completely stops working when you go off of it. There's no better drug than that. That's like ideal. It's kind of like diabetes, right? You got to keep using the treatment. It's perfect. So, do you think the food industry is in cahoots with the medical industry to keep people sick? Could weight loss drugs eat the world? There's another one that you could certainly look at. Originally made for diabetes, evidence grow that it benefits us. Allows food to stay in the stomach for longer and suppress appetite. So similarly kind of article. There are new people coming in to try to compete with it. The original were injections, so they're trying to now make it into a pill. Nova is working on oral version. I don't know why they can't name them something that you can actually pronounce. Another drawback is the nausea and vomiting that frequently companies these use. I don't know if I want to vomit all the time just to lose weight. That sounds pretty unpleasant, but in most people, a hormone leptin is released from the fat tissue that signals the brain that the body is full. Obese individuals are insensitive to that hormone. Clinical studies have shown that can make people sensitive to it again, feeling full rather than lower appetite. May also reduce the feeling of nausea. So there may be new drugs that are coming out. They're testing this. So the drugs do not just shed fat, they also lose lean muscle fat mass. So that can be a bad part of this. Some patients drop 40% of their body weight in lean mass. That's not good. You don't want to lose muscle, especially elderly people, obviously. The slimming drugs aren't just for shedding pounds, because obesity is linked to 200 health issues. So obviously it's going to flow through the other conditions. I mean, it's linked to cancers as well. I mean, it's linked to a lot of things. Fatty liver, obviously, a lot of things. Cut the risk of serious heart disease, strokes, death from heart disease. Reduce the risk of kidney disease by 24%. We just don't know yet. Being able to treat a serious liver condition, scientists are now uncovering that these drugs also engage with the brain and immune system. For some, this suggests that drugs might be useful for treating brain disorders that are characterized by inflammation, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Who knows? We don't know yet where these drugs are going to go, but the market's getting pretty excited because it's a lot of people. It may help people stop abusing alcohol. I mean, it's just amazing. Maybe we're all going to be taking this drug one of these days. It's gonna make us look. It's gonna grow hair back. Who knows what it's gonna do? Again, another article on that. It's just, this is a pretty big deal. So I put it under here. Could certainly get into that in this paper. if you like and do additional research on that. Roughly 14% of the world, let's see, it says 1.51 billion aged older than 5, or roughly 14% of all people are in the overweight, obese category. 24% of all the world over 5s are overweight. It costs us a lot of money to treat these conditions. The report estimates that the annual cost will reach $4 trillion in 2035 in the form of spending both on healthcare and working in time off due to illness and premature deaths associated with such grave illness as diabetes, stroke, heart disease. So again, just more data on American lifestyles. In a state of nature, food is rarely plentiful. We're getting plenty of food. But again, this article I'm reading, it's not that we're eating too much, because when we eat more, our metabolism picks up. When we eat less, our metabolism slows down. When we exercise more, we eat more. When we exercise less, we eat less. So he's convinced it's not calories in, calories out. He's convinced it's insulin. What he argues in this book is that when we have these insulin spikes, it adjusts our body's natural weight, and our body always goes back to that, and you can't fight that. And he says the key is to control insulin. Have y'all seen people walking around with the insulin patches that don't have diabetes, that are monitoring that, see if they get a spike in insulin? That's why fasting's become such a big deal, right? Y'all probably heard of that. I mean, you probably have, what, 3 aunts that are all fasting? Like 72-hour fast every 3 days or something. It's like, one guy said it was like a 6-day fast. It's like, the world record, someone says it was like 381 days. Does that seem possible? Someone could fast for 381 days, but there's a world record out there. I'd like to see a picture of that guy the day after. A study of contestants in The Biggest Loser, what do they all do? They gain the weight back. Why? Because when they leave the show, their metabolism has been so slowed down and it's almost a permanent adjustment. And then they say here, this is what a lot of people say, it's not just the abundance of food, it's the processed food. It's breads, it's cereals, it's those highly refined foods. What processed foods do is essentially it takes fiber out of food, so they're much easier to digest. They go in, they're easier to put in recipes. So it makes food look prettier, taste better, all this kind of stuff. But it just has it go through the body much easier, so the insulin spikes much faster. So for most people in the rich world, a fast-growing proportion of developing physical exercise is no longer a necessity because you got desk jobs. Now, this book I'm reading is not saying physical exercise isn't good. They're saying it's very, very good, but he's arguing physical exercise does not lead to weight loss. I don't believe that, because in my case, I've always been a calorie counter and it's always worked for me, but I may be the one exception. But he argues physical exercise is great. Don't do it for weight loss. The solution to weight loss is insulin. It's not physical exercise, but you might disagree with that. The seriously fat can turn to bariatric surgery, which is obviously very expensive. The new drugs were first devised to treatment of diabetes. You've already seen that. So there are side effects. We talked about that. Stop the pills, and it's going to come back. All right, look at the cost. I think this deserves to go into the rubric. $1,300, $900 a month, not a year, a month. That's like a Bloomberg subscription right there. Now we saw the sign that there's new competitors coming in, so that's good. Maybe that'll bring the cost down some. But can any healthcare system, if 40–50% of the world's overweight and needs this drug, can the healthcare system afford $1,300 a month for 50% of the world population? It's just not going to happen. There's no way, or the US population. And so what's the question there? Will health insurance cover this? That's going to be a massive debate here in the next several years. Right now, relatively few cover it. Who's using it right now? Isn't it Hollywood right now? Everybody Hollywood, like they come in losing weight, like, oh, you must be on that drug. It's the big scandal in Hollywood now. This costume will presumably evaporate if it becomes clear. So insurance will cover it if it cures all these other problems, heart disease, strokes, all that, because that saves them money. The question will be though, does that save them more money than what the drug costs? So they have to figure that out. Hopefully the drug will come down in cost over time. Yeah, there's a lot of savings there if we can do it. All right, let's cover one more article here. All right, I'm going to go back. To me, this fits under fraud, but about half of all clinical trials are never published. Companies are allowed to run many tests and publish only ones with results they like. I'm going to put this under fraud. That sounds like fraud to me. I hope you are getting the page numbers while we go, but if not, you can do a word search. Some patients may have died because data about potentially dangerous side effects were not published. Volunteers in clinical trials might have suffered harm for no reason. A patient who's taken the wrong drug for his cancer because of inadequate disclosure is being denied the opportunity to receive a better treatment. That sounds like fraud to me. All right, we're actually further along than it looks. It looks like we're only halfway through this, but we'll move faster. All right, here's one on overdiagnosis. We'll start here. You're going to hear this one in the video. This is on cesarean sections, so a lot of this we'll put on the video. Okay, any questions or anything? Y'all doing well? Are y'all keeping up with me? Yep. All right, you can see how easy this paper is to write once we get to the end of this, because you're going to have it all in the outline. You just got to put your own words around it. So get easy. Try to watch the video. I'll give you the link. Y'all can see how to get the link. Y'all see what it looks like, right? You get these doctors staring at you. So Vimeo and Money in Medicine, it's about an hour and some hour 23 long. So if you want to start watching it, but I'll get you the link in this week's email.